Hey everybody, it's Charlie from Daily Motor, and I've finally been spending an entire week with the 2025 Toyota Camry. So in this video, we're going to go over my takeaways after a week with the car. I'm going to give you my final summary on it and put it on the Daily Motor leaderboard. Now, if you do want to see more on the Camry, check the link below. We've got a dedicated fuel economy test, a dedicated review of the 9-speaker JBL sound system in this XSE model, a little infotainment breakdown, and if you want to see even more, a members-only sound test. So first things first, 9th generation of the Toyota Camry. It only comes in a hybrid now. You've got the 2.5 liter inline-4 engine paired up to either front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive if you feel like you need that little bit of extra traction ability. It's coming in a variety of trims, including this top-level XSE for a little more sporty, XLE for a little more luxury. That's how you can differentiate them, sport, luxury. This one, we got a two-tone paint option and some nice 19-inch wheels, all in all putting the car in front of us at about $42,000. Now you can make your way out of a dealer theoretically before taxes in an XSE for about $40,000 if you do a little bit more of a basic paint job, but this one I do think is getting you quite a lot for the price point. But first off, the things that I don't particularly care about, and for those we're gonna have to start inside. Getting inside and bringing the interior to life, I want to show you this big 12.3-inch infotainment screen. And it's not the size that bothers me. This is going to sound really subtle. However, this touchscreen, perfectly good size, perfectly good placement. The problem with it is there's no lower bar right here for you to rest your finger on while you operate the screen. And if you haven't experienced this or thought about it in your vehicle, it might sound incredibly petty. However, when you're driving, when you're on the road, the car's moving around a little bit, it's very helpful for you to have a place to rest one finger, whether it be your thumb or a middle finger or something like that, and then reach up and touch certain elements of the screen. It's sort of a brace and a stabilizer. If you have to just poke without any sort of rest for your hand, you end up often clicking the wrong thing in the infotainment. So sounds very, very subtle, but something that they could improve upon, something that's bothered me throughout my week with the car. Next, continuing with the infotainment system, it's not a very advanced infotainment system for 2024. Yeah, it's not the worst out there. It's not something like you get in a Mitsubishi. However, vehicles with the Android Automotive-based system are much more powerful. They've got more powerful voice commands. They integrate better with the vehicle. This is a competent system. It's a big step up from Toyota's previous infotainment systems. It's got navigation built in if you pay for it monthly. Good pinch and zoom right there. We've got wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so that's important. If we bring that up there, you can see taking up the whole screen. It works decently well, but there's nothing inspiring about it. There's nothing when you get home to the home screen here, you're like, oh wow, this is a really powerful and impressive infotainment screen. In fact, there's a lot of information that you don't get anymore in this center infotainment screen. For example, I like with the Toyota hybrids to be monitoring what information I'm seeing about my hybrid system. So up on my screen there, I've got a little indicator showing me how much battery I have left and where power is being sent. You don't have that in the center screen anymore. I used to like to be able to pull up all my nerdy information. In other hybrid vehicles from other manufacturers, you can see how much energy is being taken by certain individual parts of your vehicle, such as climate or technology or driving or elevation even, but none of that sort of information here in the Toyota infotainment screen. So I appreciate that the infotainment is straightforward and easy enough to use, but it's not very powerful. I'm actually going to move the car a little bit for you all here. It's a little bit easier to see things. Next, I think all of my complaints about the Toyota Camry come from within the driver's seat. So next is a combination. It's the steering wheel and center console. And for me, the steering wheel is the most important part of the interior because it is the piece of material that you are going to touch most regularly while driving your car. Until we have fully autonomous vehicles, you have to interact with the steering wheel. Yes, you got to start it. Yes, you have to shift it. Yes, you have to use your turn signals unless you're driving a BMW, but all of those are used less frequently and touched less often than the steering wheel. And Toyota says this is a leather steering wheel, but it must be one of the cheapest leathers that they could come up with because it feels like some sort of fake leather, if you will, some sort of imitation piece. It doesn't feel nice, and I don't know if it's just individualized for this XSE model or what, but there are many vehicles in this class that have much nicer feeling steering wheels. Not a big fan of that. And then coupled with this center console lid, look right here. See this stitching? Look how I can press in there, but right here, on the stitch is very hard. And if you're somebody who drives with one hand, your right hand, with your elbow resting right on the center console lid, the hard part of your elbow is right up against that stitching, which is hard plastic underneath. Very uncomfortable. So you find yourself essentially not being able to drive that way unless your elbow is long enough to reach into the center squishy part, or maybe breaches right on the edge, or you've got a particularly squishy elbow. Very subtle, but I wish they would change that. Getting the Camry on the road here, we get to one of my next cons, and that is, and perhaps this is unique to this being a very early build Camry, but I have been fighting rattles in this car. There is one rattle in the passenger door that I've not been able to get to go away. In fact, I can stop right here and sort of, you can hear that. It's somewhere in behind the handle. I've not been able to get it to go away. And then I've had separate rattles. Oh, look at that, that's kind of fun. That's a very basic Maverick and then a more advanced Maverick. Cute. And then I've had more rattles around the cabin, just different various times, different temperatures, different driving situations. And those little rattles go a long way into deteriorating your confidence in the build quality of the car. And a little bit further than that, the interior, while very functional and comfortable, does not feel as special as the outgoing Camry. I had a good friend who had a previous gen Camry. She had this beautiful dark red interior. In fact, it's actually sort of a medium red, dark red exterior, medium red interior. And the interior of the previous generation Camry always felt a bit surprising. Like if you got in a higher end model, you were like, "Ooh, wow, I'm getting this in a Camry. This is pretty cool. This is really solid." This car just feels fine. There's nothing super offensive other than the rattles. It's just there. And maybe the XLE would feel a little bit more special inside, but this XSE model, nothing inspiring. Especially when, again, we're talking about the steering wheel feel, very coarse. The center console feel, it's just there. Next, and I don't know if we're gonna get it to happen during this drive, but all the new Toyotas and Lexuses love to beep. And don't get me wrong, a lot of those beeps are for valuable safety warnings and information, and I am a proponent of active safety features. I think it's making both of our roads for drivers and passengers and pedestrians and other drivers, everyone's benefiting from the safety of modern vehicles. However, Toyotas love to beep, whether it's certain lane change situations, whether it's traffic crossing in front of you as you're making a normal exit onto a certain road, or I should say, I guess, an entrance onto a road, whether it's certain systems turning on or off. Lots of beeps out of this car. And I know that a vehicle makes an abnormal amount of beeps when my wife, Alyssa, comments on it throughout the week of the car. She'll go, "This car sure likes to beep a lot, doesn't it?" And I'll have to go, "Yeah, it does." And I know there are certain ways to customize the technology in this car and maybe take away a few of the audible feedback warnings, but it's something that most drivers are not going to dig into their settings to customize, and admittedly it's been frustrating for me throughout the week just listening to the beeps. Alright, so those complaints are admittedly fairly minor, but the pros for me start from outside the vehicle, and just look at the styling, the color, the wheel option for this car. I think it looks quite good. I really appreciate the evolution that they made from the outgoing car. I was never a huge fan of the styling on the last generation of Camry. I think this one looks more attractive. I think it looks more attractive even than the new Toyota Prius that everybody is swooning over. I think this car looks better. I could take or leave the two-tone paint. In fact, I would take this blue color. I'll put the name of it here below, but I would take it all the way up. I think it's a great looking color. I think the wheels look cool. Usually, I'm not a big fan of larger wheels on cars because they make the sidewall smaller and generally make the ride worse. But I will admit these wheels look very good, especially with this blue. I think the back end looks good. Even the silly twin-tipped exhaust pipe there, which we know serves no function other than just to look cool. They did a good job with the styling of this car cohesively, inside and out. They really nailed it, and I've appreciated looking at it and having it around. Okay, for the next pro, we got to get back inside the car. I'm going to move it back into the shade. Looking again in front of us here, all physical controls on the steering wheel, over to the side, the physical climate controls right here. So many physical and real buttons that are satisfying enough to touch. They make sense. If you want more fan, you push the fan button up. If you want less fan, you push it down. If you want more heat, you push the heat button up. If you want to turn everything off, there's an off button right there. There's a volume switch. The only physical control that is missing is some sort of track selection in the center. So if your passenger wants to change the radio station you're on or skip to the next track music, they're going to have to go to the media screen right here and skip through. But at least for the driver, you have physical track controls here on the right side of the steering wheel. I really appreciate that for an entire redesign like this, Toyota didn't cheap out. They didn't try to go quote unquote futuristic. They kept real physical controls here in the Camry. That goes a huge way in your day-to-day usability. My next pro comes from this center gauge cluster, and I'm glad that I got some feedback in one of my previous Toyota videos, because this gauge cluster used to frustrate me, but it's because I didn't realize there was a way to even further customize it. So if you hold down this OK button, and then you go over 2 steps to the right or left, you can actually choose what information is selectable in your 2 screens here. So that means you can fully customize. So say if you're somebody who's like me and you like to nerd out about fuel economy, then on my left screen, I've got my total average fuel economy there. And on the right screen, I have the power meter showing me how much is in my battery and where I'm getting and sending power to and from. Now, if you're somebody who cares a lot less about fuel economy, maybe you're going to want to bring up a different sort of screen, and we'll go, and maybe on the left side you want something like navigation. You want a compass there, and on the right side maybe you want your trip meter. Then there you go. You can bring that up. I really appreciate that Toyota's giving us this large customizable display here and then making it customizable and adaptable for each person. In fact, right now I have the left gauge cluster up for sort of a power meter and eco and everything. And then on the right is the analog speedometer. But you can customize that too. You can take one of the gauge clusters away. You can give a more simplified layout. You can entirely remove the analog speedometer if you want, because admittedly it's pretty much just there for looks. Well, everyone's just looking at the digital speedometer in the center anyway. So really cool that you can kind of tweak and customize that for your individual preferences. Our first pro out on the road is the fact that all new Camrys are hybrid. They've simplified the powertrain lineup. You get one engine, you get 2 driveline options, and you get that hybrid standard. And that's really smart to me, because Toyota makes a great hybrid system. And with the outgoing car, I probably would have chosen the hybrid as my powertrain choice anyway. I know that V6 is cool, but realistically, if you're buying a Camry, you probably want a practical, usable, affordable daily driver sort of car, and shoving 300 horsepower into a front-wheel drive car just doesn't make a whole bunch of sense. So I like that they've just simplified everything and told you, okay, you're getting a hybrid regardless. Do you want front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive? What that does is it simplifies and makes more cost-effective the build process for the vehicle, because they don't have to certify and manufacture as many different engines, and it makes it more fuel efficient for everybody across the board. So if I don't have to pay a premium to get the hybrid, then I'm just getting better fuel economy in general for my day-to-day driving. Now, if you're somebody who puts on tons and tons of highway miles and not much city driving, you're not really going to see too many benefits from the hybrid system. In fact, when we ran the highway fuel economy on this test, we actually got worse fuel economy than the outgoing hybrid model. Now, that's probably within a margin of error, but still, definitely no better. However, when you're just driving around in mixed driving sort of situations, any sort of city driving, you're going to get remarkably good fuel economy in this car compared to any of its non-hybrid competition or the outgoing non-hybrid model. So I appreciate that Toyota just says, hey, it makes most sense for people to be driving hybrids. Let's make them all hybrids. And that leads me into the last pro of this car, and it's that this is a well thought out and comprehensive motor vehicle package. There's been nothing in this car throughout my entire week with it where I felt like something is out of place with either the price point or the type of vehicle. It feels like a comprehensive package from the nose to the tail. And what I mean is that everything feels fitting to the price point and fitting to the mission of this car, and that is just being an affordable and attainable, everyman's sort of efficient and cost-effective family sedan. It has room for 5 people, 4 people comfortably. It has the technology that you're going to want and expect from this class. It gets good fuel economy. It's easy to drive. It's decently affordable. I know this one we're in is $42,000, but you can get yourself into a nicely equipped Camry for the mid-30s. It's got all the safety functionality. It's got practical storage. Nothing about the driving experience is confusing or difficult for any sort of entry-level driver to figure out, but yet it's satisfying enough for a more veteran driver, somebody who's going to spend a lot of time behind the wheel. Most vehicles I test have some sort of weird quirk to them where you thought, okay, this doesn't make sense in this style of vehicle. I really haven't had that happen with this Camry throughout the entire week. Everything, it just works. I'm coming away onto this green light here. The hybrid system's going to smoothly transition from electric only over to the engine. I'm going to accelerate. It's a very smooth acceleration. It's predictable. It makes sense. The steering is a proper weight for the style vehicle. The ride is not crazy plush or smooth, but it's not jarring either. When I need the power, I can put my foot down and it pulls pretty darn confidently. I mean, it's definitely got get up and go, but then it settles itself right back down. It's quiet, but not crazy quiet. We got dual pane glass in the front, but I just think just single pane glass in the rear. Yep. So again, makes sense for the price point and the type of vehicle that it is. We've got rear air vents and rear power points. We've got heated and ventilated seats, heated steering wheel. All of those type of features that you would expect at this price point in a top-level trim Camry, but then you get a lower trim Camry and it's not going to have it. Again, that makes sense. We've got wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. That's what I would expect at this price point. We've got a volume knob, for gosh sakes. I mean, that's what I would come to expect at this price point. There's not been anything that if I were sitting here with Chris Brower in the car, we could tease the Camry for, because they've thought of everything. Even the sound system, it's strong, but it's not fantastic. It fits the car and it fits the price point. And while that is a pro to me, that cohesive package, the confidence with which Toyota came out with this product, in my final thoughts of the vehicle, it's also maybe slightly disappointing just in that the previous generation Camry, it felt like you were getting away with something. It felt like it was sort of this unsung hero where everyone talks about other vehicles, but then you get into a Camry and you're kind of like, oh wow, this is really good. I always forget how special this car is. And this new generation Camry feels more predictable. It's sort of like, yeah, okay, this is about what I would expect the Camry to be. It's very good, it's very competent, but there's no wow factor here. There's no pizzazz, and that's what I was expecting when I got behind this car for the first time this week. Is I was like, ooh, okay, everybody's been talking about the new Camry. They talk about how good it is. I'm pumped. I'm jazzed. I'm ready to be blown away. And if I'm blown away by anything in this car, it's just its predictability. And is that really what you want to be surprised by? Some people, yes. Some people, predictability is exactly what they want out of their automobile. And if you're somebody who spends 20, 30,000 miles in your car every year, yeah, you're probably going to want predictability. You're going to want just a very get in my car and drive and have it be something dead reliable and easy to use and borderline forgettable. That makes a lot of sense to me. But now Toyota has other products in their lineup that are a bit more niche. You've got the Prius that's weirder now and tries to be a little bit more sporty. You've got the Crown and the Crown Signia that are supposed to be the more pizzazz and kind of luxurious sedan. And then they want you to step up to a Lexus ES if you want even more of that luxury. The Camry is more utilitarian, for better or for worse. So for me, that's I don't know if I'd go as far as to say sad. It's a departure, because I don't feel like the Camry is this cheat code anymore like it used to be. But before we wrap up, we need to put the new Camry on the Daily Motor leaderboard. And admittedly, before I got this car, I was thinking this was going to be in the running for Daily Motor Car of the Year, but I no longer suspect that to be the case. So let's see where we're going to put it. So we got 30 cars now on the leaderboard. Current leaders: Kia EV9, Hyundai Ioniq 6, and Toyota Tacoma. 25 Camry, I'm putting it right up here, 13th place, just above its sibling, the Toyota Prius. The Camry's good, it really is, but to me, when I'm ranking cars, I look at three main categories. What is it like to drive? What would it be like to own? And how well does it execute its purpose? And the Camry executes its purpose fantastically, but driving and owning, it's just going to be simple. I mean, you're going to say, yeah, I've got the new Camry. Okay, and then you're going to move on to a different conversation, because that's really all there is to say about it. And admittedly, both myself and a lot of my trusted close colleagues in this industry, as well as some leading big book publications, would take the Accord over the Camry. And I didn't think that was going to be the case, but after a week with the car, I agree. The Accord has more pizzazz. It is just slightly more exciting to be in and to drive. It's a little less efficient and maybe a little bit more Spartan feeling inside, but between the infotainment, the driving dynamics, the styling, to me it would be the Accord. So thank you all so much for watching. If you do want to see more on the Camry, check the link below. We've got those other videos for you, and we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from Daily Motor, and as always, drive on.